We will spend the next two classes studying Egypt, a leader named Muhammad Ali, and Britain's eventual seizure of control over Egypt. For the last two classes, we have been discussing events south of the Sahara. The Sahara is the world's largest desert and exists right here. Everything south of Saharan Africa is referred to as sub-Saharan Africa. Now we're switching our focus to north of the Sahara in North Africa, specifically Egypt. But before we can tell the story of Egypt and their leader, Muhammad Ali, you must first understand the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans founded their dynasty in 1300. They were originally nomadic tribal warriors from Asia Minor. They quickly established control over large parts of Eastern Europe here, and also Asia Minor. Asia Minor is modern-day Turkey, which is right here. Please note that the Ottomans were Muslim, but they were not Arab-speaking. Instead, the Ottomans were ethnic Turks speaking Turkish. In 1453, the Ottomans conquered Constantinople and renamed it Istanbul. In 1517, and this is important to our story, they conquered the Arab-speaking Middle East, pushing south into this peach area that's in the map. It's colored in peach, pushing south into the Arab-speaking Middle East and conquering Egypt itself. By the late 1500s, the Ottomans had built one of the dominant civilizations of the world. Their empire rivaled that of the Spanish and the Chinese. Soon after the reign of the famous Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, however, the empire began its slow decline. By the late 1700s, the Ottomans had less control over their provinces, less tax revenue due to a decline in trade, and their military proved increasingly outdated. The empire was ripe for invasion. In 1798, that invasion came in the form of a young French general, our old buddy Napoleon Bonaparte. France, if you recall, was in a decades-long war with Britain. Britain's up here. Here's France. Okay, so why invade Egypt? Napoleon's goal in invading Egypt was to actually threaten Britain's control of India over here. Napoleon's thinking was that if he could place an army in Egypt and march his army east, he could create an empire for France that stretched from the eastern Mediterranean all the way to the Indian Ocean, potentially even capturing India itself. Initially, the invasion proved successful. The Ottoman forces and their local Egyptians were no match for Napoleon's 40,000 disciplined and well-equipped soldiers, and this defeat shocked Arabs and Turks. Historian and Princeton professor Eugene Rogan describes this shock in his book, The Arabs. Over the next 3 years, and I'm quoting here, the people of Egypt came face to face with the customs and manners of the French, the ideas of the Enlightenment, and the technology of the Industrial Revolution. The French failed to appreciate just how proud the Egyptians were and how humiliating they found the experience of an alien occupation. The Egyptians' sense of superiority, on the other hand, had forever been shattered. End quote. But after conquering Egypt, Napoleon's army failed to push east and the invasion stalled. Recognizing the stalemate, Napoleon abandoned his troops and returned to France. In France, Napoleon would soon declare himself dictator and then eventually emperor. That left several thousands of French soldiers holding out in Egypt. This is where our main character comes in. His name was Muhammad Ali. He was a commander in the Ottoman Empire, but he was neither an Arab nor a Turk. Instead, Muhammad Ali was ethnically Albanian. In 1801, the Ottoman Sultan sent Muhammad Ali with 300 Albanian soldiers to push the final remnants of the French army out of Egypt. Muhammad Ali did just that, and soon after began consolidating his control over the Ottoman province of Egypt. But instead of remaining loyal to the Ottoman government in Istanbul, Muhammad Ali developed a plan to break Egypt away from the empire and create a hereditary kingdom of his own, separate from the Ottomans. In order to do that, Muhammad Ali took immediate steps to modernize the Egyptian government, military, economy, all along a European model. First, Muhammad Ali had to destroy his rivals within Egypt. In 1811, he did that gangster style, murdering 78 of his main rivals, which were a group of Egyptian nobility called the Mamluks. And he did it after hosting a dinner party. Then Muhammad Ali seized direct control of Egyptian land, confiscating grain from both peasants and landed aristocrats. He used the wealth from the land to pay for new military academies, hiring British and French officers to train his men. He sent the sons of the Egyptian elite to Paris and to London to study medicine, engineering, chemistry, and law. By the 1820s, they established new universities and secondary schools in Cairo and Alexandria, which were the two main cities in Egypt. He even established schools of language to train native Arabic speakers in English and French. Muhammad Ali broke several centuries of an Ottoman ban on the printing press and began printing government pamphlets and textbooks. Muhammad Ali's government introduced agricultural reforms of crop rotation, increased irrigation, but most importantly, he ordered farmers to grow cotton that he could then trade with European textile manufacturers. But Muhammad Ali did not intend for Egypt to become a mere exporter of raw materials and importer of European commodities, which was happening in India and China at the time. In an effort to make Egypt self-sufficient, Muhammad Ali began industrializing, investing in European-style heavy industry. His emphasis was on producing the weapons necessary to build a great army. By the 1820s, the Egyptians were producing 1,600 muskets a month. By the 1830s, they had built a naval complex that produced 9 warships in just a few years. Engineers and managers were recruited from Europe, but the labor force, numbering in the tens of thousands, came from Egypt. But above all, if Muhammad Ali were to successfully break with the Ottomans, he needed the soldiers to do it. Here, he followed the French example of the levée en masse. If you recall, in 1793, the Committee of Public Safety ordered a universal conscription of all Frenchmen in order to beat back the Austrian, Prussian, and British armies. In the 1820s, Muhammad Ali did the same, turning Egyptian peasants who traditionally did not fight in the army into professional soldiers. By the 1830s, Muhammad Ali felt strong enough to challenge the Sultan in Istanbul. In 1831, he launched an invasion of the Ottoman territory through Palestine, which is right here, through Lebanon, and also Syria. In 1833, the Ottomans had suffered a series of defeats and granted Muhammad Ali de facto control over the eastern Mediterranean. The Egyptians then launched a second invasion in 1839, and they crossed into Asia Minor, the Turkish homeland, and threatened the Ottoman capital with ruin. In 1840, just as Muhammad Ali's forces were on the verge of destroying the Ottoman Empire, the British intervened to save the Sultan. The British feared that the collapse of the Ottomans would increase France's influence in the Middle East. France supported Muhammad Ali. They also feared that the Russians would carve out territory of their own, leaving Britain's control of India threatened. Finally, there was Muhammad Ali himself, who not only controlled a major source of cotton, but was also developing the industry to produce textiles. This industry, as you recall, was a British monopoly. So in 1840 and 1841, the British sent their navy, some of which was still engaged in the First Opium War. They sent them all the way to the Middle East, bombing Beirut, which was right here, and also Alexandria, right here. Muhammad Ali was forced to sign a treaty that dismantled his massive army and effectively stopped the expansion of Egyptian industry. Muhammad Ali died in 1849. His accomplishments in Egypt were great, but his ambitions were even greater. Muhammad Ali wanted to topple the Ottoman Empire and replace it with his own empire. He wanted to create a modern Egypt that rivaled Europe in terms of its industry and military power. In the end, Muhammad Ali was confined to rule over just Egypt and was technically still under the Ottoman Empire. After his death, Egypt passed to his sons, but Muhammad Ali's descendants would ultimately lose control of their country to the British Empire. But that is a story for tomorrow.